Greetings, everyone. Shalom. I'll be discussing the third verse from the Gospel of Thomas, continuing our Gospel of Thomas sermon series. But first, I wanted to address a couple of things. Why don't I allow comments on this YouTube channel? Well, I have other YouTube channels where I do allow comments, but unfortunately, I just don't, life is too short, to be honest, to deal with Christian apologists and haters and trolls and all of that. And you'll find, sadly, that mainstream Christians on YouTube, the ones that leave comments, are sometimes some of the most, just the cruelest and most unforgiving folks you'll find on YouTube. And obviously that's fairly ironic, to say the least, but it is what it is. And to be honest, I just don't, life's too short to read, a 2-sentence long retort or a 2-sentence long insult from strangers that I've never met, that don't know me. And I just don't really have much patience or tolerance for that sort of thing, to be honest. There are other ways to contact me, but and some folks have, and that's great. But chances are, if I'm interested in your opinions, I'm probably already subscribed to your YouTube channel, or I'm reading your books or articles or what have you. You know what I mean? YouTube comments it's not a great way to communicate and to share ideas and information, and it usually just devolves into a sort of psychologically deranged back and forth. It's not a good way to communicate. So at any rate, that's why I do not allow YouTube comments on this channel. Also wanted to address my music. Look, if reggae is not your thing, that's fine. Or if you don't think someone like me, who looks like me, should be playing reggae, that's fine too. I get it. And somewhat sympathetic to that view, but look, reggae is one of my first loves. I started listening to reggae when I was 15, and I'm 45 now, so 30 years. Yeah, I played in a reggae band, mostly reggae. We played other styles, but mostly reggae, for about 6 years when I was in my early 20s. Okay? So I've been writing and playing reggae for a very long time. I also really love bluegrass music. To tell you the truth, bluegrass is probably my favorite music. And I love Americana, alternative country stuff. But I really love reggae music. What can I tell you? For me, it's the only pop genre of pop music that really has this uplifting spiritual vibration. And I consider folks like Bob Marley and Peter Tosh and some other roots reggae folks, from the earliest times, 60s and 70s and all that, they're like prophets to me. Notice I didn't say they're saints. Okay? Certainly weren't perfect, no one is, but some of their messages were prophetic. Bob Marley's lyrics, Peter Tosh's lyrics, it's good stuff, okay? And it carries with it a really elevated, enlightened spiritual vibration when you listen to it. And you can tune into that vibration as you're listening to it. So anyway, I really love reggae. If reggae is not your thing, or if you don't think someone that looks like me should be writing and playing reggae, when I post a song to this channel, don't listen to it. If it's not your thing, that's cool, I get it. Or maybe you just don't, maybe think I'm not a very good musician. That's cool too, believe me. But if you're into it, great. If not, that's fine. But that's sort of how I channel the Holy Spirit. It's through my music. I've been a musician since I was very young, and I enjoy playing music, writing music, and so that's that. Okay? So let's turn to verse 3. If you don't have a copy of the Gospel of Thomas, you can get a copy of my book on Amazon for $7.77 called Yeshua, the Anointed One, Pre-Pauline Christianity. In it, I have Q, I have the Didache, I have the Epistle of James, and I have the Gospel of Thomas along with my commentaries. So if you want a physical copy of the Gospel of Thomas, you can buy a copy of my book on Amazon. So let's look at verse 3. Jesus said, "If those who lead you say to you, 'See, the kingdom is in the sky,' then the birds of the sky will precede you. If they say to you, 'It is in the sea,' then the fish will precede you. Rather, the kingdom is inside of you, and it is outside of you. When you come to know yourselves, then you will become known. Then you will become known what you are, right? And you will realize that it is you who are the sons of the living Father, or daughters, okay? But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty, and it is you who are that poverty." Okay? So here, Yeshua doesn't really talk of a future kingdom, okay? He says that the kingdom is all around us. It's everything. It's everywhere. It's already here. We're just too blind and deaf and dumb to see it and know it and live it. But especially when we engage in these deep spiritual practices, I practice a form of meditation that comes from the Kriya Yoga tradition and also contemplative prayer practices from the Christian tradition. And, when we are able to clear the mind, still the energy, and experience that deep silence, that deep stillness, pure consciousness, pure spirit, and we discover what we actually are, we experience heaven on earth, right? So it's not some future destination, although, of course, as I talked about in the previous video, we can reincarnate to an astral plane or experience ascension. In other words, we don't have to keep reincarnating into form over and over again. That's the promise of our spiritual practices and our righteous lifestyle, righteous living, moral, ethical life that Yeshua taught us how to live. And so that's the promise of our spiritual path, ascension. Eventually we can exist in a heavenly realm, an astral plane, without the need to continue reincarnating into forms and bodies. However, it is possible to experience heaven here and now. Right now. You don't have to go anywhere. Okay? It's not a future destination. It's available to you all the time because you are that. You are that. You're already what you're seeking. You are already a being of pure light, a divine being. It's impossible to become a divine being because you already are a divine being, you see. So, you already are at your core a soul. Pure consciousness, which is always peaceful, always tranquil, always blissful, always content. And so you always have access to that dimension because you are that. And so that's what Yeshua is trying to tell you here. Okay? And he says, when he refers to poverty, he's talking about spiritual poverty here. He's not talking about, economic hardship, of course. But if you will not know yourselves, if you don't wake up spiritually and figure out what you are, realize what you are, have that realization, that enlightenment experience of knowing what you are, your real self, not your false self, not this temporary body, mind, personality composite that you're typically identified with. But once you awaken to your true nature, your highest self, then you no longer live in poverty. It says, "But if you will not know yourselves, you dwell in poverty." You dwell in this, you're mired in this identification with form, with a body, with a mind, with a personality. And you suffer. You suffer because of it. And you live in ignorance. You're spiritually ignorant. And you suffer. And you dwell in poverty. That's what Yeshua means here when he says, You dwell in poverty. You live in spiritual ignorance, and you suffer. And you're identified with this temporary form, and this temporary body, mind, personality composite, the false self, in other words. So you don't know what you are. You're living in spiritual poverty, okay? And you are that poverty, right? If I'm identified with a body, mind, and personality, that's what I am. That's how I exist. I don't know any better. I don't know any different, because I've never experienced my true self, my soul, my Christ nature, in other words, okay? And so, through our spiritual practices, through our contemplation of the mystical teachings found in the Gospel of Thomas, and through our righteous living, righteous lifestyle, which includes, a vegetarian diet, vegan is even better, if you can swing that, and, following the two most important commandments that Yeshua told us, right, was basically to follow the golden rule and to love others like they're yourself, because they are. At our core, we're all the same. We're all one. There's a sameness and a oneness at the core of our being that we share with everyone everywhere. Okay? So when you treat others like yourself, that's one of the most important commandments, and also to love God with all your heart. Be devoted to your spiritual practices. Be devoted to God. Be devoted to the highest way of living. Okay? And to a righteous lifestyle. So if we follow these moral and ethical precepts, and we have a righteous lifestyle, and we practice, some of the fasting. I recommend to fast at least once a week for 24 hours. You should do longer fasts here and there. If it's okay with your particular constitution, check with your doctor first. And you practice regular baptismal purification, for that ritual purification, regularly, frequently, in the living waters. I recommend, if you live nearby a river or a creek or a lake or the ocean even, it's fine. But practice this ritual baptism in the living waters. Okay? This is what the Essenes taught. This is what Yeshua and his disciples, the Ebionites, taught. Okay? So you do your spiritual practices, you have a righteous life, and eventually you awaken to your true nature, to what you actually are, at the core of your being. Okay? You transcend your identification with your temporary false self, and you unite your attention and awareness fully with your highest self, with what you actually are. Then you no longer dwell in poverty. Okay? And you experience the wealth and abundance of the divine. We're not talking about material wealth. Of course, Yeshua taught against that. Okay? By the way, there's no such thing as a wealthy Christian. It's an oxymoron. It's impossible. Yeshua taught us that it's easier for a camel, to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Okay? So we should eschew materialism, consumerism, capitalism. Yeshua meant for us to live in small, rural communities, Christian communities, where we shared all of our wealth. That's how the Essenes lived. That's how Yeshua's disciples lived. That's how the Ebionites, or the original Christians, lived. That's how we're supposed to live. We're not supposed to live in capitalist, consumerist, materialist, shallow, superficial, degenerate societies. Okay? Sorry if you find that offensive. And, you're really into capitalism, you think greed and selfishness is awesome, and you think that's the Christian way to be, greedy and selfish and always looking out for yourself and competition and trying to outdo, your neighbors, keeping up with the Joneses. And if that's your lifestyle, that's not a Christian lifestyle. That's not what Yeshua intended. I'm sorry. A lot of folks think that's... Read Yeshua's words. Read what he taught. Look into how the Essenes lived. Look into how the Ebionites lived. They were communitarians or communalists. They lived in small Christian communes, and they shared all their wealth. They were not communists, Don't get confused. Yeshua, I don't think, would have been in favor of a overpowering tyrannical government forcing you to share your wealth with others at gunpoint. That's not what we're discussing here. Voluntary poverty, voluntary simple living, let's say. Okay? At any rate, so the kingdom is not in the sky. God's not hanging out on a cloud somewhere, punishing you and rewarding you for your deeds and all of that. Okay? It doesn't really work like that. That's sort of a simple-minded, simplistic way of viewing, the spiritual path or the afterlife or what have you. Okay? You reap what you sow. This is true. Karma, in other words. But it's not God punishing you. It's just there are universal laws of cause and effect that we have to obey. We have to obey God's law. We have to obey the universal laws of cause and effect. But we shouldn't think of it as, don't take it personally. You're not a person. Don't take things personally because you're not a person. God is not punishing you or rewarding you. That you have a very limited, small mind and consciousness if that's what you think is going on. That's not what's happening. These are impersonal laws of cause and effect that were designed by the Creator that we must follow. It's just that simple. So don't take anything personally because you're not a person. You are an infinite being of pure divine light. Period. And so that's what Yeshua is telling us here. And so please go back and watch one of the previous videos where I teach you how to contemplate the verses of the Gospel of Thomas using a simple technique of contemplative prayer. And in future videos, I'll get deeper into meditative practices and contemplative practices. But for now, that's a good place to start. If you're not already meditating, if you're not already practicing contemplative prayer, you can start there. It's a really nice way to have a running conversation with the Lord. Okay? Many blessings.